So it's 12:01, so I'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everybody for being here. My name is Jacob DeCastro. I am the communications manager for Transportation Alternatives. We are a nonprofit based in New York City, working to make New York City streets safer to bike, take transit, walk, gather, and thrive. And we've been doing it for 50 years now. This is actually our 50th anniversary. So I'm super excited to be here to talk about NYC 25 by 25, which is a challenge to our city's leaders to give space back to people. And I'll get into more of the campaign here in a little bit. So the whole premise of NYC 25 by 25 is that there's a simple math problem that governs our cities. And this math problem is public space minus cars equals livable cities. So as you can see, there's three variables, I guess, here: public space, cars, and livable cities. So I'm going to take a few seconds now to talk about, what that looks like in practice in New York City. So New York City, public space. There are 6,300 miles of streets in New York City. They are our largest public space, and a great asset to the city. But we dedicate 75% of the street space to moving and storing cars. And that includes more than 3 million free parking spots, which is 1.5 spots for each car in the city. And this is in a city where less than half of households own cars. So what does this result in? Well, this results in unlivable cities. Traffic clogged and dangerous streets cost the city of New York and its residents more than $6 billion a year in traffic crashes and lost time. And that's not to include, the human costs of traffic violence among our city that injures thousands of people every year. So let's take a look at this again, looking at that streets variable. Like I said, 75% of our street space is for cars, 51 for moving them, 24 for storing them, and the rest of us, are basically left with scraps. Sidewalks, less than a quarter, and bus lanes, bike lanes, and open streets together account for less than 1% of our street space. And like I said, less than half of households own cars in New York City, yet we give all of this space to cars. So let's just represent this a little bit differently here. How New Yorkers travel: 70% of New Yorkers walk, take a bike, a scooter, or transit to get to the destination, while just 30% drive. Yet the proportion of that is completely shifted, is completely flipped for how our space is dedicated. So since this is TransitCon, I'm going to focus on our bus aspect of our campaign. New York City's buses are the slowest in the nation. They average just 8 miles an hour, and oftentimes even slower than that. But compared to the average New Yorker, bus riders in New York City are less likely to have a bachelor's degree and more likely to be a single parent, be born in a different country, be a person of color, and have a child at home. So increasing bus speeds is a matter of increasing equity, increasing opportunity. So that's where our campaign comes in. NYC 25 by 25, a challenge to our city's leaders to give space back to people. We launched this campaign in 2021, ahead of the New York City mayoral election. And we had major candidates endorse our plan, including current Mayor Eric Adams. So we were really at the forefront of pushing this idea, that I'll talk more about in a second, into the mainstream. So what can we do with just 25% more space for people? So the whole idea of 25 to 25 is to give 25% more space to people by the year 2025. So let's talk about what we can do with 25% more space. We can build 500 lane miles of bus-only lanes, 500 lane miles of bike lanes, busways, millions of square feet of community space. We can make intersections safe across the city. We can build 1,000 miles of open streets, more space for vendors, restaurants, and retail. We can expand pedestrian space. We can close the street outside each of New York City's public schools to cars, more bike parking, space for deliveries, space for paid parking to raise revenue for the city. And we can create, public plazas and travel hubs outside of each subway station. We can do all of this with just 25% more street space. So let's take a look at what this looks like. We have some renderings here of what 25 by 25 could look like in practice. So for bus commuters, 25 by 25 could be a route to economic mobility. New York City's buses are the slowest in the nation, like I said, and the New Yorkers who can most benefit from time savings, lower cost commutes, and access to more jobs are often relegated to buses trapped in car traffic. So the median income of bus riders is substantially lower than those of subway riders or New Yorkers overall. So, when we talk about increasing bus speeds, like I said, we're increasing travel times, we're increasing access to opportunity, to jobs, to doctor's appointments, etc. So let's take a look at what this could look like. So this rendering of what this street could look like afterwards. We have, there's still car lanes for people to drive on, but we have protected bus lanes, a cycle track, safe intersections to cross on, and more. Researchers have found that the single most important factor affecting someone's potential to escape poverty is access to transportation. And that's what this would do by giving, people access to high quality bus lanes. So converting car lanes, we have some research about how this has worked already in the city. Converting car lanes into protected bus lanes on a major commercial corridor in the Bronx, Fordham Road for people in New York City, improved bus speeds by 20%. And then another bus line in Manhattan that they did found that the addition of bus lanes, not even a bus, but just bus lanes, reduced travel times by 36%, with no increase in congestion for private car drivers. So, a lot of times people push back against, bus priority projects by saying, this is going to make car trips slower. But research shows that there's virtually no impact on car travel times for other people. So another rendering that we've done for New Yorkers living with a disability, we could be building a more accessible city with fewer barriers to get around, the 25 by 25. Today, more than 1 in 10 New Yorkers are living with a disability, and more than half of those disabilities are ambulatory. And if you've walked on a New York City street, you know that sidewalks are commonly blocked by obstacles like big trash cans, et cetera, big piles, mountains of trash on the street. And lots of neighborhoods don't have access to a subway station with an elevator or an accessible subway station, meaning that hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers with disabilities must rely on our paratransit service called Access-a-Ride, the bus or bikes. So how can we fix that with 25 by 25? Well, by converting parking spaces into drop-off and pickup zones and putting trash in containers, we could clear access to the curb, making it easier for people to access those paratransit vehicles, keeping our sidewalks clear for people with wheelchairs, people pushing strollers, et cetera. If we convert car space into bike lanes and work with City Bike, which is New York City's bike share operator, we could offer safe transportation alternatives for people with disabilities. And finally, a network of car-free open streets. Open streets are New York's car-free, car-limited program that started in the pandemic to give these people space on the street. So by creating a network of these car-free open streets, people traveling in wheelchairs, pushing strollers, pushing carts, could walk without the worry of impassable sidewalks and curbs that are inaccessible. So our last rendering here is for New Yorkers with other health problems. So for the New Yorker with heart disease or asthma, we could have cleaner air to breathe and a faster and easier way to arrive at open space by getting rid of cars. Today, 1 in 6 New Yorkers who die from heart disease or stroke are under 65, and these account for more than 1 in 4 premature deaths in the city. For Black New Yorkers, the rate of premature death due to heart disease is almost twice the rate of white New Yorkers, and 1 in 10 children in New York City and 1 in 12 adults have asthma. So it's really important that we create car-free, car-limited streets to create cleaner air. So here's what this could look like. We know that air pollution from particulate matter is directly linked to heart disease and asthma. And traffic is a leading contributor to air pollution. Emissions from cars and trucks are the second largest source of the city's air pollution, and that has decreased by only 1% since 2005. Only a 1% drop in these emissions in the past more than 15 years. So evidence of where this has worked in New York City, this is not a rendering of this, but in Times Square, when they converted car space into pedestrian plazas, nitrogen oxide pollution dropped by 63%, and nitrogen dioxide pollution dropped by 41%. Both of these pollutants lead to direct health consequences in humans, including cardiovascular and respiratory health disease. So moving on, I want to also go back to our math problem at the beginning and talk about how we've used public space minus cars equals livable city in 2 bus projects in the city. So without further ado, public space. So New York City reclaimed 1 mile of street on 14th Street in Manhattan. This is just another major commercial corridor. Back, forget the exact year, but there was plans for the city and the state to shut down the L train. So this project was to create bus priority when the train was shut down. That project ended up being, scrapped, greatly reduced, but the city still moved ahead with the busway on 14th Street. So the busway lasts about a mile, and they turned it into a car-free busway. So basically, during the day, cars aren't allowed to access the street. And if they do access the street, they have to turn off at the next available right turn for people making deliveries. And the results were impressive. So during the pilot of the busway, bus speeds increased by up to 47%. Ridership increased by 24%. There was up to 50% more biking on the corridor. And again, close to zero impact on side streets. So this pilot was made permanent. And it was such a success that they actually had to order more buses to meet the demand for increased ridership. So I just wanted to show this picture of a mural that they just finished, I believe last summer, on the busway. So moving on, another example of this reclaiming of space, this is a more recent example, is Jamaica Avenue and Archer Avenue in Southeast Queens, New York. For those of you who aren't aware of this corridor, it's again another commercial corridor. It's near JFK Airport, and it's near a major Long Island Railroad, the commuter rail hub. And this busway serves 250,000 daily riders. So it was a really important location for a busway. So they turned it into a car-free busway. And it's important to note here that 61% of people who travel to this corridor arrived by bus. Again, a lot of local businesses, a lot of people push back, saying, how are people going to get to my business? How are people going to come here if they can't drive here? But the vast majority of people arrived by public transit. Like I said, 61% of people who arrive to this corridor arrive by bus. It's a major Long Island Railroad hub. There's multiple subway lines serving this area. Most people are arriving on foot or on transit. So the results of this pilot were 34% faster trips for bus riders, which is a success. Faster bus trips are good. And again, I just want to show a photo of the corridor to show like these kinds of projects are possible. 25 by 25 is more than just an abstract concept. We're seeing this kind of big thinking implemented in New York City today. So I want to talk about next about another project that we worked on at Transportation Alternatives. So in late 2021, we worked with Remix by VIA, which is a planning tool, to reimagine what 5 streets in New York City could look like with our 25 by 25 vision. So we chose one street in each borough, and today I'm going to focus on one of these streets. This corridor was 125th Street in Manhattan. And 125th Street is a heavily congested commercial corridor, commercial destination in Harlem, and it's a critical connector for bus riders, bike riders, and people accessing bridges to other boroughs. So by looking at this photo, a lot of things that we could talk, a lot of issues we could talk about. But essentially the problem here is that we have a street plagued by inequitable distribution of street space. The bus lanes at the curbs result in frequent double parking. There's no bike infrastructure, not a lot of trees, etc. So the results of this inequitable infrastructure are long commutes for bus riders, insufficient space for bike riders, widespread air pollution, and high rates of traffic violence. So using this planning tool called Remix, we did surveys of people in the area on the ground to see what their concerns are with this corridor. And we put together this proposal. So of those 60 of the public comments we received, nearly 1/3 mentioned that despite the dedicated bus lane, transit service was frustratingly unreliable because cars and trucks were frequently double parking and violating the bus lane. This community board, which is, I don't know the best way to explain community boards, but basically they're members of the area that have like an advisory opinion. They're similar to council districts, but it's a group of like residents, residents offering feedback on like housing, transit projects, as well as other agencies. But so this geographic community board had the slowest bus speeds and reliability of all 59 community board districts in New York City. So to fix this, we reimagined this as a true commercial backbone. We embraced a center running bus lane, which makes room for a two-way cycle track on the south side, while still allowing space for cars and trucks to make deliveries. We proposed a center running bus lane here to minimize double parking and delays from private vehicles and to give space for that protected bike lane. And we've also done polling about 25 by 25. Our most recent polling was from 2021, and we found that New York City voters overwhelmingly support all of these ideas. I only really talked about bus lanes today, but we did polling on bike lanes, bike share, upgrading crosswalks, adding benches, small parks, playgrounds, open streets, and more. And they overwhelmingly support these ideas, even when building them required the loss of parking. So it's really great to hear that people support livable streets, livable communities over parking. And this movement has gone coast to coast. This vision, we started it here in New York City, but a similar organization in Los Angeles called Streets for All adapted 25 by 25 last year ahead of their election season. So you can also take a look at LA's Streets for All's version of 25 by 25. So this vision, this movement is not limited to New York City. It's in other, we're trying to bring it to other places as well. So to wrap up, I just want to leave you with this. The question is not whether we can be bold enough to shift away from car-centric planning, it's whether we can afford not to. So we started 25 to 25, 2021, thinking about how we could reimagine New York City streets post-pandemic. This amazing, immense opportunity to reshape how we get around the city, how we gather in the city, and more. With climate change, this is our moment to be promoting sustainable transportation, better infrastructure that's more resilient and stronger. So with that, thank you. And I believe we have plenty of time for questions if anybody has any. I'll start going through the chat and seeing what people have left. And if you want to learn more about this project, this vision, I invite you to go to NYC 25 by 25.org. I'll put that in the chat. And you can also see the 4 other corridor visions that we put together as well.